Hi, Mike Callahan. I wanted to take a quick minute to introduce myself as well as say thank you to John and Jonathan and the entire Service Autopilot team for putting together an amazing conference once again. I've been here since day one 3 years ago, and I thank you guys for allowing me the ability to get up here on stage and talk about automations, something that I'm extremely passionate about, not only for the benefits that it's had to my company, but for the benefits, if executed right, it can have in your company and allow you to pull yourself out of the day-to-day grind of your company if that's something you want to do. So what we're going to be talking about here is how to use automations to grow and optimize your business. And in order for me to get a real good feel on how to tailor this talk to the crowd that we're in right now, if I can get a quick show of hands in the crowd here, if you could raise your hand, anybody from the lawn care landscape industry? Okay, anyone out here from the home cleaning industry? Okay, and anybody else in any other industries out here, please raise your hand just so I can get a feel of, what the makeup of this crowd is. All right, perfect. So one thing that I always find when I go to conferences such as Service Autopilot, the different ones that I go to each year, is I find myself having my head down in a pad of paper, feverishly writing notes, and looking for some executable things I can bring out of each presentation. So to avoid you having to take a ton of notes on the slides that are actually behind me here, I've taken the liberty to create an automation that will allow you to text in and get a copy of all the slides that I am presenting with. So all you need to do is text to the phone number 38470, and in the text body, text SA3. So you're going to be texting SA3 to the phone number 3840, and through some automated magic, it's going to ask you for your name and your email. Once you submit that through automation, I am going to email out to you a copy of the slide deck. But wait, there is a little bit more. I really felt it was necessary that if I was going to bring some value to this presentation as well as the Service Autopilot community, that I was able to give you an executable blueprint to build an automation that as soon as you got automations turned on in your application, that you could go out and build and have an instant return on your investment in automations. So I've went out and built a social review raffle or giveaway where through automations you can go out and actually solicit reviews for your company through Google, Yelp, Facebook, Angie's List, and automatically get reviews from your customers without any human interaction. So if you text SA3 to 4870, in addition to the slides, I am going to email you a blueprint how to build this automation in Service Autopilot. We just recently did this in our company 2 weeks ago. We netted 25 reviews. 23 of them were 5-star reviews, and 2 of them were 4-star reviews in a matter of a 2-week period using the same exact automation that I'm giving you the blueprint for. So as you text that in, I'm going to give you a little background on myself and why automations is so near and dear to my heart and why I'm so passionate about it. So about 10 years ago, I went through a very pivotal point in my life. I went through a divorce, was married to my high school sweetheart, and after that divorce, I took a look inward. And this really was not a good place in my life, to be candid about it. But as I looked inward, I looked at the things in my life that I really enjoyed, and I looked at some of the things that I just absolutely did not enjoy. They weren't a good fit for what I wanted out of life at this point as I was turning a new leaf over. And one of the major pain points of things that I did not like in my life was actually my business. And I had realized at that point that I had built a business that literally revolved around me as the owner. This business could not function without me on a day-to-day basis. So, like many of you, you went out to find Service Autopilot as a solution. I searched the internet, and I came up with a solution, or a group of people actually, that were called lifestyle entrepreneurs. And these lifestyle entrepreneurs had pretty much picked up all their worldly possessions and moved to some exotic location like Bali or Thailand. And they were working 4 to 5 hours a week with an internet connection and a laptop, working basically from the beach in exotic locations. And I said, well, this sounds perfect. I'm going to pick up, move out of the country, and run my lawn care company from the beach in Thailand. Well, obviously reality set in, and that probably is not a reality that probably could happen with a service business. But the idea of automating the process and procedure so I wasn't needed daily was intriguing. So as I continued my research, I found a subset of lifestyle entrepreneurs that actually didn't leave their hometown, but used automation to grow and automate their business so they could spend time with friends and family and not have to be an integral part of their business. And in addition to these people that did that, there's another subset that went out and built leadership teams that were basically managed and run by automations, where they could pull themselves up above the leadership crew that they had built, and they would work as the CEO, making only CEO decisions. And by leveraging automation and technology, they were able to work on the higher level activities to grow and scale their business a lot faster than most. So that is what totally intrigued me. And what I did next is I went in and dove into automations. I went out and bought a platform, and I spent 5 to 6 years building out, automating my whole entire company. In the process, I spent 3,000 to 4,000 hours working in automations, and probably up to this day now have invested close to $100,000 seeking out the best experts across the whole entire world in automations in each specific niche. So I can confidently say the things that I'm going to show you are executable. They are streamlined and they work. And they have been basically reviewed and optimized by some of the best automation minds in the whole entire country and the world. Prime example is this. The gentleman I met and talked with about a month and a half ago is the top automation expert out of Brazil. So trust me, the things that I am going to show you in this presentation are very executable and they work. So real quick, what is automation? Because I know there's a lot of questions of what is this automation thing that you speak of, Mike? So it's a system that allows you to leverage technology to fulfill manual or repetitive tasks within your business. So whether if it's happening on a daily basis, a weekly basis, monthly, quarterly, or yearly, you can build an automation around it to make sure it happens each and every time the way you want it to happen without you physically having to tell someone to do it or do it yourself. That is the beauty of automation. The perks of automation are that once you have a standardized system and process, it is very easy to put automations to it to make sure that system and process will be executed each and every time without you the same exact way. And you're able to replicate, now you're able to replicate yourself through technology. And I'm going to give you a couple, two or three quick examples how that can be done. So internally in our office, we've gone in and taken screenshot videos of the actual computer screen in service Autopilot, and all the way from lead acquisition of a phone call through submitting an estimate, through fulfillment of scheduling on the dispatch board, through billing. Anything that happens in our office now is completely documented through a video. So now we no longer have to physically go train a new admin that we hire, or if someone quits, we can run them through an automated training video series that will make sure they're getting trained to the set process and procedure that we initially started with, and we don't have to worry about the trainer training to the set process and procedure. So once we standardized it and documented it, it happens the same exact way each and every time. And then we went out into the field and made videos with a smartphone, a tripod, and a wireless microphone. Some of my neighbors at this point, I will be honest, probably think I am certifiably crazy because I spent almost a month in my yard filming myself and some of my managers doing all the process and procedures in the field, whether it be lawn mowing, stick edging, shrub trimming, mulch installation, you name it. We've got a video how to do it, step-by-step instructions that teach to the exact process and procedure that Callahan's Lawn Care wants their staff to do. So automations is going to ensure what should happen always happens each and every time. So if you ever fall sick and you couldn't run your business, or if you ever look to sell your business, you can comfortably hand off the running of your business through automations, and you've actually created a turnkey business. So now your business actually has a higher value to the end user because you can actually go out and sell your business, give them everything is documented, processed, in an automated way it can be executed, and the new owners will be able to take these automations you built and be able to run your business the same exact way you have in the past. There's several things that automations are not. There is a misconception in our industry that robots are taking over and they're going to do your job for you and you no longer have to work. Or at least some people in your business will no longer have to work. But in order to be this gentleman sitting by the pool, having a cocktail while his robot is doing his job, there are 4 key elements in a business that have to all fall into place for automations to allow this to happen. But someone still is physically going to have to go return phone calls, make sales calls, mail things in the mail. Automations can dictate when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and how it should feel. But there are still some manual processes that automations can manage for you, but they're still going to happen within your business, in my opinion, to be successful. So these 4 things in a business that need to be successful are a business model, a business strategy, systems and processes, and then a great implementation of automations. When you add these 4 elements up, this equals a successful business. So when I've gone out in the past and I helped people implement automations in their business, there was an interesting revelation that I came up with. It doesn't matter how well you execute your automations in your company. If one of those 4 elements or 3 elements before a great automations implementation is broken, the automations will never work the way they should. And at the end, it will not equal a successful business. So you may have the right business model, you may have the right business strategy, but if your systems and processes within your company are broken or not well documented, there's no way automations can be successful. And at the end of the day, your business itself will not be successful in the long term. So before we take the things that are in your head and try to dump them into automations and service autopilot, we need to have a good look inward of your process and procedures, your business model, your business strategy. And let's put a blueprint and execute them on paper that we can follow. So when we take this blueprint, it's going to be very easily to transfer into automations. But if we're trying to pull it out of our head and dump it on the screen on the automations canvas, 9 times out of 10, it will be a massive failure and a waste of your time. So a quick example of this is hiring a new employee. So in the beginning, we have a new applicant we're trying to get. They fill out an interview or an application. We interview them, we hire them, we train them, we onboard them, and they're good to go. And some people would think out of their head, that's a perfect automation. But it's flawed. And why that automation is flawed is we forgot to take into account all the other things that may happen along the way that aren't the perfect path of an automation. So what happens if we don't hire this individual? What happens if they fill out the 2 applications and they don't make it to the interview? Or what happens when we hire them and they quit? Or even worse, we actually end up firing them. Each automation has got to account for the perfect path and all the other subsequent things that could happen along the way, and how do we deal with each one to make sure the automation completes itself, and how do we handle the outcomes of those things. So there's 5 core areas in your business that I have found that you can successfully automate each and every time. They are marketing, sales, fulfillment, finance, and internal. The 2 biggest payoff areas in your business that you can automate, in my opinion, for the biggest return on your investment of time and money are sales and internal / HR. I like to encompass HR and internal because a lot of times it deals with employee training and different things with employees as well. So I'm going to give you 2 real life examples on the 2 biggest payoff areas in automations. The first is going to be sales. The second is going to be an internal / HR area. So as we're looking in the sales area to automate, there is one major theme that we need to look at. And we need to look at your client and where they are in the life cycle, the sales life cycle. So we could have a prospect that's thinking about requesting an estimate, we can have a lead that requests an estimate. We can have a lead that has an estimate that needs to be closed. We can have a lead that becomes a customer, or we can have a lead that doesn't hire us, and eventually that customer, no matter how good your service is eventually going to cancel your services. So now we want to segment them from prospect to lead to an estimate to a customer or a loss estimate or a canceled customer. But I challenge you to take a look at it a little bit deeper, because I know that if you dive in just a little bit deeper and look at it, you're going to get a way better return on your investment and close more sales and create a way more pleasurable experience for your prospective customer and your actual customer. So with the same example, we need to go down and actually run that example on a service level. So Mrs. Smith may have just been a prospect who's interested in lawn mowing. She hit our website and checked the box, said, I want a lawn mowing estimate. So now Mrs. Smith is a lawn mowing lead that needs an estimate. Now we're going to go out and actually give Mrs. Smith a lawn mowing estimate. Now she's a lawn mowing lead that has an estimate that we need a yes or no closing on the sale. Hopefully Mrs. Smith now becomes a lawn mowing customer. On the flip side of that, if Mrs. Smith decides, you know what, the price is too high and I'm going to let my nephew cut the lawn, Mrs. Smith is now a lawn mowing lost lead or lost estimate for lawn mowing. And the converse of that, if Mrs. Smith has an estimate submitted and we lose her estimate for lawn mowing, she could be a lost lead, Mrs. Smith is a customer for lawn mowing, and then she cancels. Mrs. Smith now is a lawn mowing cancellation. So if we can dive in and segment where Mrs. Smith is on a service level, we are able to talk to her on a very personal level that's insightful. And if we do it right, we should be able to get her to know, like, and trust us along the way. Because we're going to talk to her on a specific service level where she's at in that customer life cycle. And the key to automation is to be able to have a very personal conversation, whether it be through the phone, email, or a letter, but in an automated fashion so you physically don't have to do it yourself. Now, once we've segmented Mrs. Smith, we're going to go out and educate her. And we're going to teach her how to do those services that she's requested an estimate for. And we're not going to try to be sleazy salespeople and go out and try to make a sale. We're actually going to want to educate her and give her valuable information about the services she's interested in. And the next step is we're going to go out and submit an estimate to Mrs. Smith. And then when we go to close that sale, we're going to follow up and sell to her on a personal level that is meaningful. And automations will allow you to do all of these things, but the biggest return on investment on your time is to be able to segment your potential customer, where they're at in the life cycle on a service-based level. So we can make the conversation very meaningful. So right here is a flow chart of the sales process as I see it and the way we've automated it in my company internally. So on the right here, or on the left, we have 2 points of entry. On the top is a estimate from a website, and at the bottom is a form that's filled out in the office when someone calls. So both of these are segmented on a service level, so we know where they're at in the customer life cycle, as we talked about before, and what service they've requested. And there can be multiple service requests or different services. So it could be a lawn mowing estimate, a fertilizing estimate, all at the same time. The first process is we drop them in to an immediate email that's sent out called a lead letter. And the people in here, they're in SA Academy, are probably familiar with a lead letter. Anybody in here who's not familiar with what a lead letter is a lead letter is a letter that is sent out immediately after a customer requests an estimate. It usually is five or six things of why your company is different and what your company stands for. So you may have a 100% satisfaction guarantee, and you may show up to service the property each and every day the same day, barring any rain delays. In our automated system, we send an email, and we also send a hard copy mail. So Automations goes out, sets up a task to fulfill, to print out a lead letter and mail that out by the end of that business day. The next step here is this gray box is we send our potential consumer through a short-term educational sequence. So if we stick with the example of Mrs. Smith and lawn mowing, we are going to send her 3 to 5 educational emails which are completely automated that have no human interaction at all. And these emails are going to talk about how she should be doing the service herself for lawn mowing. So one email might contain the proper mowing height, another may be irrigation, and how to sharpen your blades. So you may ask, why would you ever want to educate your potential consumer how to do the service that they're asking you to hire? Well, there's a twofold reason. A, you're going to frame yourself as a topic expert on lawn mowing. And in addition, if you do your marketing right in these emails that are purely educational, you are going to frame yourself and your service to have a higher perceived value because you're bringing knowledge and useful information to the consumer and educating them what an expert should do. The second thing it's going to do, if your marketing content is right in these emails, is you should be overcoming any of the sales objections that you hear. So a lot of times we hear the same exact things on the phone about the price being too low, the competitor always leaves the gate open so the dog may run out and get hit by a car, or they never blow the back patio off. Every company's different, every market's different, but I would suggest putting a pad of paper by the phone and writing down what are the 3 to 4 common objections to not hiring your service or your competitor's service and address them in these emails. By doing so now, you are going to educate the consumer. They're going to begin to know, like, and trust you because you're actually giving them valuable information. You are going to actually raise the perceived value of the service so you can charge a higher price and close more sales at a higher price. And you're going to proactively try to overcome any of the price objections or sales objections before they even come up in the conversation of closing the sale. So hopefully this makes sense. And we're going to do this on each and every service the customer requests an estimate for. So that's why it's very important that we segment each service and where they're at in the life cycle so we can speak specifically to lawn mowing, or we can speak specifically to weekly or bi-weekly home cleaning, or maybe a one-time cleanup for the holidays in the home cleaning industry. We want to be able to speak specifically to the service that they are interested in so we can engage and connect with that potential consumer right out the bat. The next thing we're going to look at here is this diamond. And this diamond is when we go out and submit the estimate. So I know a lot of you are sitting there wondering, well, Mike, why would we educate them if we're going to give them an estimate live right on the phone as soon as they call? Awesome. I think, honestly, that's the way it should be done. Close that opportunity for somebody else to get an estimate and close them on the phone. But it is my opinion that we still keep the short-term educational emails and sequence going, because if we don't close them on the phone for the sale immediately, those emails are going to go out automatically with no human interaction each and every time. You will never forget it, and they will close more sales. And most of the time, they will close more sales at a higher price. So when a lot of people see some of the things we put on Facebook and different things like that, that several of us are utilizing an automated system similar to this, is we're closing our sales at 65 to 70% on average in the spring. And a lot of people's response is, well, your prices must be too low. But the actuality is we're putting the time in before the sale to create a higher perceived value and overcome some of the price objections before we ever get to the consumer. And that is allowing us to charge higher prices and close sales quicker. So now that the estimate has been submitted, and we've kind of dealt with, well, what do we do if we do an estimate immediately? That's fine. I would suggest letting the education go. And now that we've done the estimate submitted, there's a process I like to call 0 days to 20. And what we do in this process is we systematically follow up on an estimate till we get a yes or no for 20 days. And what we found historically is most of these estimates are closed between 0 and 48 hours and 7 and 10 days. And I don't know about you guys in the audience, but before automations, I was lucky if I followed up once on an estimate, maybe twice 48 hours out. But I definitely didn't follow out all the way to 20 days. But by creating an automated system that has a set process and procedure, the system goes out and systematically assigns a task and a to-do for someone in the office to make a phone call or an email. In the phone call, we actually create a standardized script. So whoever is calling to follow up on the estimate knows what service it is, how long this estimate has been open, and we've standardized the sales call so we know whoever's calling, we have a standard predictable way we're going to close that sale so the customer experience is the same exact way no matter who's calling. So hopefully at this point, we're going to come over here, and in this process, hopefully we win the service. So we systematically go out through automation. As soon as we know that the sale is closed, we send out a welcome email. This email includes the temporary username and password for the payment portal so we can acclimate them to the way Callahan's Lawn Care does their billing and what the expectations of the service are. After that, about 30 to 35 days later, we send out an email that touches base to make sure they're happy with their service. And there's one of two things that we usually find at this point. Either A, they're not happy with their service and they want it fixed, but they really aren't willing to call our office. But because we're communicating through email, they are less hesitant to tell us how unsatisfied they are. But within 35 to 40 days, it's enough time usually to save the sale, get a QC specialist out there, and fix the problem. The other thing that happens is they write back and like, wow, you're actually interested in how I feel about my service. I'm happy. And hey, by the way, I'm having a grad party next month. Would you mind coming out and giving my property the once over and get me a great job? So customers automatically ask for an upsell or extra ancillary services that are probably higher profit margin jobs than the initial service you got them in on. The next two things we do is we send out monthly newsletters that educate the consumer about the services that they should be doing, or actually the things they should be doing in the property each and every month according to the month, and we give them some tips. And at the end it says, hey, by the way, if you need help with these services, we're always here to help. In addition, we send out a refer a friend about 45 days out. Hey, who do you know? Do you know somebody that could benefit from our services? And if they refer somebody and they sign up, we send them out a gift card. The reason why the refer a friend, the follow-up, and the newsletter is so important in automations is there's two reasons. By constantly communicating with your customers, you have a better chance of them opening your emails, and it's a regular occurrence, so they expect it. The other thing is by getting them to engage with your emails, your email deliverability will be a lot better, and you have a better chance of getting it in their inbox versus their spam folder, and they're going to open it and engage it and hopefully whitelist your email. So the next thing that's going to happen here is if we don't win this estimate for lawn mowing, we're going to have a loss estimate for lawn mowing. So going back to the beginning, it's important that we segment what service they're interested in. So we could segment Mrs. Smith as a loss estimate for lawn mowing. We're going to go back out every 12 months to Mrs. Smith and send her a personalized letter or email saying, Mrs. Smith, we're sorry for whatever reason you did not hire us for lawn mowing, but we would like the opportunity to re-estimate your property. And in our company, this spring, just off loss estimates, through automations, it generated an extra 176 estimates of estimates we had previously lost, and we closed them at a little over a 60% ratio. So without segmenting them and capturing where they're at in the life cycle, you are literally throwing money out because you are paying for these leads through your marketing channels to get them in to submit an estimate the first time. But why would you ever forget about them? Because you paid for that lead. Why not segment them in automations and be able to remarket to them because you've already paid for that lead, and hopefully you can convert them down the line every another 6 to 12 months. And I forgot to hit on it, but the newsletters and that interaction is allowing you to be able to stay in front of the customer that you've lost an estimate with, because we also send these to people who we've lost estimates to or have canceled our services. So by doing so, you're going to be on top of frame of mind when they're going to actually look for a new service provider. So you want to stay in front of them and build that relationship. So inevitably, the third part is if she was still a lawn mowing customer, she's eventually going to cancel. So we segment all our services for anybody who would ever cancel. Same fashion as loss estimate, we go out every 12 months and try to reactivate anybody who's canceled. And we found that 80% of all canceled customers are indifferent. And what I mean by that is they're not happy and they're not really pissed off at you either. They're just okay. So they may have found a lower price option down the street from another service provider, or they may have had a kid come home from college that maybe needed book money. So they're cutting the lawn for 4 years, and after those 4 years, mom and dad don't want to cut the lawn, so they need to go out and hire another lawn mowing company. But if we're doing it right, we are still staying in front of that consumer with good content that they enjoy through our newsletters and some of the other things we may be sending them. So when they are ready to go out and hire a lawn mowing company after little Johnny graduated college, hopefully we've built their trust, and the first person they're going to think of is us because we've spent the time to nurture that relationship the last 4 years. So in addition, especially a lot of companies in the Northeast, we have services that need to be renewed annually. So we will segment services that need to be renewed annually, and every 12 months or whatever that period is, we actually go out and try to renew those services. And the last point I want to make here is if Mrs. Smith was that lawn mowing customer and she had also requested a fertilization estimate, and we had lost that estimate. Why we really want to dive in on a personal level and segment them is we would never want to send her a generic letter saying, we're sorry, we lost the opportunity to win your business. And that would be in correspondence to the fertilizing. But she's an existing customer right now for lawn mowing. So that's the wrong marketing message, and she's going to be confused what you're talking about. So if you're able to segment your service per service where they're at the life cycle, you could go in and renew her lawn mowing and send a different marketing piece to her to try to get a new estimate out for the fertilization. And by having a very personalized and detailed segmentation, we're able to go out to speak to her on a personal level based on what services and where she's at for each service. So I know a lot of people here are dying to see what Service Autopilot's automations looks like inside. So this is a screenshot of that 0 to 20 days sales pipeline where we follow up till we get a yes or no. And you can see it goes from 24 to 48 hours to 3, 5, and 7 days. We could systematically now see in each one of these boxes where each person lies and how many estimates we have open in each one of those segments. So from executive level, it's a really quick overview to see how many people have open estimates in each interval. It's a great way to track where we're closing most of our sales. And if it's the end of the month and you're a salesperson and you need to close some sales in the next 24 hours, well, I would suggest you probably work from 24 hours out to about 3 days and work that portion of your pipeline, because that's probably going to net the biggest results for gaining more sales. But now we have a systematic way of looking in and tracking and seeing a visual representation or picture of where people are in our sales pipeline if we built out a sales pipeline through automation in this fashion. So the next thing that I'm going to look at is internal/HR. And this example is going to be how to go out and recruit, train, and onboard employees. So just like the last example, we're going to look at how they would enter the system. So on top here we have a landing page or a website-based entry form where the applicant can fill it out and be allowed to fill out the application. The bottom here is an office form in case somebody calls the office to give their information, and then we are going to dump them into the automated sequence. Right here in the blue, we have a 2-part application process for our prospective employee. And the reason why we do this is we want the prospective employee to jump through several hoops to qualify themselves. And one of the examples that we like to use, that we've used successfully, is sometimes we're looking for laborers and we don't care if they have a license or not. And sometimes we're looking for crew leaders that have to have a license to drive the crews around. So through using different features of automations, you could screen and weed out all the applicants that are a good fit to interview, and the other ones would not be coming to your interview. So you are automating the screening process and segmenting your applicants to make sure you are utilizing your time in the best fashion. Once they get in, they come over to here. Automations will send an automated task to whoever's basically fulfilling the interview. And that's going to set up the time and date for that. The next thing that we do in automations is we create a standardized interviewing package. There's standard 5 to 6 questions, and these 5 to 6 questions are standardized. So if I'm interviewing and somebody else is interviewing, we're asking the same exact questions. And the reason why we do this is we want to base all the applicants with an unbiased. So if I'm doing 5 interviews and somebody else is doing 5 interviews, we have the same exact rating system or questions, and we can rate those applicants on and hopefully get the best applicants to be hired. And automation comes in here as when those interviews are set up either through a task or to-do or an email, that standardized interviewing package is prompted to be printed out so they can use it each and every time, so our interviews are happening in the same exact way no matter who is doing them, and we can rate those individuals on the same exact criteria each and every time. So hopefully the next process is they actually get hired. And what we do in our company is we send them through an automated series of emails that they need to interact with that is going to indoctrinate them to our company culture, value, and mission. And in order to, at least in my belief, to have a very successful company and build a core group of people that believe in what you're trying to build, we really need to go over the core values of the company. We need to go over the mission statement. And by doing that in an automated fashion, the benefit is it is introducing all the new people in the organization to those beliefs the same exact way. Because we all know each person's going to go over those different features in the company differently. But if we could standardize it from the beginning and automate the actual fulfillment of it, we know everybody that comes into your company is going to have the same exact feeling and process of being onboarded, and they're going to be introduced to your core values and mission statement the same exact way each and every time. So we have a very, very standardized way of bringing them on. In addition, we go out through automations and up to 3 attempts collect their W-4 or their W-9 for a subcontractor. After that, a task is applied in the office for whoever's fulfilling the fulfillment of those. And it says, hey, Joe hasn't filled out his W-4. We need those for his payroll. This is another point where automations can automatically throw a red flag up, because if the individual cannot fill out their tax documents to get their paycheck, there's probably a good chance they're not going to use your mobiles or hard copy schedules to get the job done right and actually stick to your process and procedures. So at this point, we may realize this individual is not a good fit for our organization. So we scroll back up here. This is where we come back to the beginning of the conversation of replicating yourself through technology. We've built videos for every process and procedure that we do in our company, whether it be the office or the field. So we've built separate landing pages or videos that automations will push through each time. So each time somebody gets hired for a lawn mowing position, they will go through the same exact set process and procedure, how we want lawn mowing done. And now I don't have to physically be out there managing and doing the training, and my managers don't also have to do the training. So we know each time somebody comes in, they're going to be trained to the exact process and procedure the way they should be. And when we get them into the field, we're not just handing them a piece of equipment and say, hey, figure it out. We know we've at least given them a ground or a good base to do that in our company. So in addition to that, I also feel it's really important to have a standardized employment contract and get an employee handbook fulfilled when you onboard somebody. So in the automations, we built an employment contract that merges in their name, their address, their pay rate, bonus, anything that's pertinent to that individual employee. Automation automatically fulfills that through a task and to do and a contract that needs to be printed out and fulfilled. In addition, we've automated the fulfillment of our employee handbook. Same exact thing. There's a task or a to-do applied in that automation to make sure the onboarding individual onboards them and fulfills their employment contract each and every time. So just like the sales version of automations, I want to give you an example in Service Autopilot with the internal/HR, how we actually utilize Service Autopilot in automating the recruiting, training, and onboarding process. So this is a form in Service Autopilot. If you have not turned forms on, please call Service Autopilot. I believe there's some training prerequisites that you have to do before you get forms turned on. Do it and get these things turned on, because they are going to be a lifesaver for using automations. So we run our whole automations and control it through a form. And as you can see on the form, literally from interview date to hired or not hired, completed certain trainings, handed in their W-4, every process along the way in that previous slide right here is documented either through a checkbox or a radial button. So we can now systematically move the applicant through there and make sure there's accountability for whoever is onboarding them and training them. They're doing the job the way and in the order it should happen. And for some reason, whoever's onboarding tries to skip a step and pushes them through, we have an audit trail now that we can go back and look at if they didn't do the job right the first time the way they should have. So hopefully that gives you some insight of best practices, how to run automations through a form. I believe John Caldwell is going to be tomorrow going over using automations, and I would suggest probably checking out his form presentation. So lastly, I want to go over best practices in automation as we wrap up here. And you should always use a standardized tag naming structure. And that's going to go back to what kind of tag is it and what does it interact with. So it's going to go back to the 5 areas of business you can automate, being sales, marketing, finance, and internal. And those tags should be spelled out because at scale with automations, you will have over 1,000 tags. I would say several thousand tags. And in addition, the existing tags you have in Service Autopilot will not be able to be used in automation unless you physically go in and check them off that they're being used in automations. Best practice, my advice would be to create new tags for every automation, create a standard naming structure so everything's exactly the same and it's easily sortable and you know exactly where they are. And when we're naming these tags, we really want to adhere to the status, the history, to-dos, the profile of the person, and a system tag that I like to call basically your ticket to ride, because it gets you into the automations and it gets you out of the automations and it pushes you from each point of the automations on. In addition, we want standard naming structure for the automation. So I misspoke earlier. So your standard naming for the tags is going to be your status, your history, your profile, your to-dos, and system tags. And the naming convention for the campaigns themselves are either going to be a marketing campaign, a sales campaign, a finance campaign, an internal campaign. And when we sort them that way, they're a lot easier to segment and execute in the system. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, look for it. I'm going to be putting out a white paper explaining tag structure and actually how to implement that for best practice in Service Autopilot in the next few weeks. And if you text into that vanity number, I will shoot you an email out to get you that white paper as well. So it'll be the Service Autopilot Guide to Tags, and my thoughts on best practices there. So the last thing I want to talk about is spam. And I want to ask a couple people in the crowd, what is spam? So yeah, one sentence or less, what is spam? Okay. And over here, what do you think spam is? One sentence or less. Okay. So actually both these individuals are right. Spam is whatever the end user thinks it is. So we want to be really clear what information we're sending people and stick to it. Because if they think it's spam and they click and mark it as spam, it is actually spam. And there's 2 big reasons why this is important. A, it can personally affect you because it's going to hurt your deliverability of your emails. And a rule of thumb is for every 1,000 emails you send out, you really ideally want only 1 or less spam complaints. But to keep the threshold, 2 or less spam complaints for every 1,000 emails sent out will keep you in good standing and keep you in people's inboxes. The other higher level effect of this is if the community as a whole doesn't follow good guidelines and procedures and we start getting a ton of spam complaints as a whole community, and if eventually it may affect our deliverability of the whole community here in Service Autopilot. So we really want to be good patrons of sending out exactly what we tell people we're sending them, and don't send them information via email that they're not requesting. And especially our Canadian counterparts in here with the Canned Spam Act, you should really use the opt-in for email, whether you're in the US or States. But if you are in Canada, by law, you need to have a double opt-in, and Service Autopilot has built that in, so you are compliant in Canada. And I believe last time I checked, in Canada, if you are sending unsolicited emails, it's up to a $10,000 fine per email. So this is some serious stuff that we need to adhere to, not only here in the US, but as well in Canada. So just want to thank everybody for their time. If you have any questions on automations, feel free to hit me up in the hallway, lunch, cocktail hour here later, and as well as I'm going to be back on the stage here with Martha and Mr. Chapman at 2 o'clock for a Q&A panel where I'm happy to ask any questions regarding automations or other things we've done in our lawn care company. So thanks again to the Service Autopilot team, John and Jonathan, and everybody else out in the crowd to take a few days out of your busy business schedule to come here, better yourself, and basically learn from each other. And my final thought would be, if you haven't introduced yourself to somebody in another industry, go out, make it a point here over this break or the next few breaks. If you're in the home cleaning industry, find something in lawn care or vice versa. I have learned an amazing amount of information and knowledge from some people in the home care industry in the last 5 or 6 months. Our industries are very similar, but our approaches sometimes are a little bit different, and those different approaches can net a major, major result and benefit. So hope everybody has a great conference, and if you have any questions, feel free to stop back in this room at 2 p.m.